So in the last video that I posted, how we became codependent, how to know that you are codependent, and what you can do about it. This is a very beginner style video. People think they need scripts and they need steps and tell me what I'm supposed to do. But when you're in the moment, you're not going to remember those scripts. You're not going to remember all those steps of what to do. This is the self-awareness step. This is the catching you in the moment when you're doing these things step. And from there, your intuitive guidance is going to lead you. And this is also where you're starting to build self-trust. So what I want you to do is just be aware in the moment so you can slow yourself down. Now you've brought yourself into that state of conscious awareness, not like, after the fact. We want to move past like last year, last week, yesterday to in the moment as it's happening. I want you to start to notice that, catching yourself in the moment so that you can stop it and replace it with something else. Stopping yourself in your tracks, because that's exactly what it's going to be like. And the biggest thing that you have to be able to embrace along this journey is the non-judgment. Have discernment. Yes, that's not the non-judgment I'm talking about. I'm talking about not judging yourself, okay? Not being judgmental of yourself, not shaming yourself, not saying, oh, you're such an idiot, not saying, you're never gonna get it. No, speaking kindly to yourself. Let's go back to that video that I did before where I was naming all of the things that you needed to do. First, you have to start to face your own reality head on instead of always sticking your head in the sand, kind of being that ostrich. So for this one, let's look at 4 conflict styles, relating them to the 4 trauma responses. You might be floating through all 4 of these trauma responses. That's very normal. This is how you've been living your life, not feeling safe, not feeling secure. And if you're familiar with the 4 trauma responses, the 2 trauma responses you're probably most familiar with is the fight and the flight response. And then there's the fawning response, and then the freeze response. I want to start with the fawn because that one is going to be probably the one that you're tending to the most as somebody who's codependent. This is likely how it all began, because fawning means to friend and befriend. I will give you whatever you want because I want you to be happy with me. I will admit error and fault even when it's not mine to own. And what this means in the long term is you're making yourself a doormat. You're making yourself an easy target for people to take advantage of because they know they can always say things to you. They can always disappoint you. They can criticize you, and you're not going to get mad. You're going to be the one somehow being in the place of saying sorry. So take note if you are in that people pleaser response when it comes to conflict. Okay, when it comes to conflict, you want to just always smooth things over. You never want conflict to arrive. It's a conflict avoider. Okay, being conflict avoidant. And how does that feel in your body when that comes up? It's going to make you feel very anxious. It's going to make you feel very nervous and tense. And so you want to smooth things over as soon as possible so you can feel safe again. But in the long term, this keeps getting you into trouble. So I want you to just start noticing when you go into the fawn response. And what you can do instead is take a breath. Okay, I want you to be taking mindful breaths often. This is part of having that conscious state of awareness. When you're in the moment of you doing something, you're like, that glass of alcohol is about, no, we are setting that down. We're just going to take a step back. Okay, and there's some points that I want you to remind yourself of. You have a right to your feelings. You don't have to defend your feelings. All of your feelings are okay, even anger and painful ones. No one can tell you what you should feel, even yourself. What you are feeling will pass. Your feelings have value. Your feelings have intelligence. Allowing yourself to feel your emotions is healthy. Sometimes the best thing to do is to just observe the other person, listen to the other person. You don't always have to think about what to say, just listen. and just go from there. Because after all this fawning and nicey-niciness and trying to avoid conflict, eventually you may erupt. The volcano may spew and you will get mad at some point, and that is the fight response. And for a lot of people who are struggling from codependency and people pleasing, this fight response is going to come out of nowhere. People will look at you like you have some sort of problem. And well, you do have a problem. You don't know how to handle conflict because you've been stuffing it in with your nicey nice face. And now they see this complete 180 of you that's probably quite confusing to them. The whole crying over spilled milk, it's disproportionate to what you're actually experiencing in that moment. This is when we're going to be most prone to invalidation of our emotions. It's going to leave us feeling the most guilty for standing up for ourselves because we've done it in a way that wasn't at all effective. Now we feel like we've created a bigger problem, and to the abusive person, when you act like this, it's known as reactive abuse. You might have had it and ended up throwing something, breaking something, maybe even pushing the person or slamming doors. Now you're the abusive one. You're the unreasonable and out of control one. Again, this is the time we need to take a breath. Be like, I'm about to lose it right now. And why is that? Well, because I've been stuffing it in this whole time. No wonder. Okay, that's not going to be effective either. Although it is okay for me to be angry. Remember, I am allowed to express my emotions. But there are some people that regardless of how I feel and regardless of how well I express it to them, they're never going to understand. They're never going to validate me. And I have to start to recognize who those people are that I will never be able to have healthy conflict with. So then we have the flight response. When you're in conflict, your initial reaction is just to get out of there, to avoid it, to be like, I gotta go, to shut down the problem and leave immediately. There's no people pleasing going on. There's no fighting back. It's just flee the scene. This is avoidance. Maybe you're ghosting, maybe you're ignoring the problems like your parents did, never bringing up your concerns, shoving things under the carpet. If you have kids, though, this is dangerous. It removes the opportunity for you to form a close relationship with your family because it stays surface. And well, you might like it that way. And you like it that way because if you were to go under the surface, if you were to go deeper, then you might discover deeper feelings that people have about you. You might discover the deeper truths that you're not ready to face. Or if you did go under the surface to find out how people were really feeling, then you might feel like you were the one at fault. And now it's your responsibility to fix that now, which puts you back into that codependency. So it's okay to go below the surface with the awareness that I'm just going to listen and I'm going to remind myself in my head, I'm going to keep telling myself, I can listen to this person, but I don't have to fix them. I can give them compassion, but I don't have to fix them. I can care for their feelings, but I don't have to be responsible for their feelings. So often it's the flight and the fawning that go hand in hand. It's like, just smile and nod. Everything will be fine. Can I go now? Let me get out of here. And that's what I mean. Then things stay surface and you never get to form deeper, intimate bonds with people. Because the flight, the avoidance and the people pleasing is keeping things surface level and inauthentic. You're not your true self being that way. And so the intimacy of your close relationships are going to suffer. And like I said, if it's that way with your children, then the closeness and the bond that you potentially could have with your kids is also being compromised because you're not willing to go below the surface with your kids to talk about what's really going on without taking it personally, okay? Because they might be making you feel like you've done something wrong. I can own that. I can own my responsibility. I can own my part in the problem, but it's not my responsibility to fix their part of the problem. I'm here to do my side of the work and hope that they will also. But a lot of times in the whole healing process, if you have adult children, they want you to fix them still because that's what they've been used to. And It's impossible. You could say, oh, okay, what do you want me to do? What can I do to make it better? And you might be going to counseling and therapy or seeing a coach like myself and saying to the coach, oh my gosh, my kid doesn't want anything to do with me anymore. What can I do to make it better? The best thing you can do is nothing. Now it's going to feel so weird because you're like, what do you mean? There's nothing I can do. No, just work on yourself. Okay. It's time for you now. It's time for you. It's time for you to figure out how you were codependent and how you were abandoning yourself and over focusing on other people to provide meaning in your own life. That's done now. Start to be a role model, start to overcome your own codependent behaviors, start to form relationships with people that are not codependent, so that you can show your adult child that you're not doing that anymore. That's why this is so hard to overcome. I'm not telling you like 10 steps to overcome codependency. It's all based on awareness. Okay, so everything that I'm telling you is for you to have the light bulb go off, to be like, oh, so that you can catch yourself in the moment, to be like, oh yeah, I remember that's this right now. Okay, cool. Good to know. The other trauma response is the freeze response. And this is ultimately where you're going to come to. You are going to come to the freeze response where you shut it all down and you stop. You give up. It feels like completely giving up because it is. You're giving up your codependency. When there is some conflict that arises now, you are going to be in this freeze state because you are in this state of pure self-awareness and observation now. You don't know how to react. I don't know anymore. You look like a deer in headlights because you are. Okay, there's no effort. You are now sitting back as you watch it all crumble before you, or as you saw it all crumble back there. You were trying to pick up all those pieces, but they kept falling out of your bag and it's too hard. And you're like, okay, I succumb to my illness of my behavior that has been making me sick, that has been poisoning all of my relationships. So it's a very hard place to be because essentially what has crumbled is the relationship with yourself now. You realize that you've got nothing more to give. You've also given up trying. You realize you don't have the skills or the strength to do this anymore. And like I said, this is actually a great place to be in because it allows you to shut down, turn everything off. Likely a lot of unresponsiveness to people's requests to you is going to be happening during this time as you are reevaluating what's really going on here. This is a much better place to reevaluate yourself than from the fight. The fight is for sure where a lot of people will make quick decisions to leave relationships, to end marriages. And well, that will just come with a different process to follow. Maybe you'll end up in some marital counseling or family therapy for one last try, but heaven forbid, don't you dare go back to fawning again, okay? Just to impress that therapist on how perfect and nice you actually are and how it's the other person that's the problem. Remember, you are just as responsible for your part in this relationship as the other person is. It's just different because it doesn't make you any better. Your manipulative behaviors are unconscious, whereas the other person's manipulative behaviors were very conscious. Now we're trying to make you very conscious because once you realize that your behaviors were manipulative, being a codependent person, you don't want that because you are this caring, loving person that doesn't want to be in relationships that are manipulative. And especially if that's you, you don't want to be that person. Okay, we want to use that fight response in a healthy way, not in an abrupt, hasty, kind of risk-taking way, because you might have already done that. From the freeze response, you're having a reevaluation and you're slowing it down and you're going to start to fight for yourself again. Okay, and you're going to start to fight for yourself, but from a different energy this time. So those are the 4 responses that you're going to start to be much more aware of. And the place that we want to be is in a place of a safe and secure response. And that is that present moment, mindful, conscious awareness without judgment state, which requires you to center and ground yourself, My reason for change is to be an authentic person who has deep and meaningful relationships. Even if the only relationship that's deep and authentic is with myself, that's what we're doing this here now for. That's why we were so unsatisfied in life this whole time. Now we recognize that in order to have a satisfying and purposeful and passionate life, this is what we need to do. That was a lot to digest. We're going to move on to the other steps that are not going to be as lengthy to take in. Now, the next piece here, which is kind of a step in the process, is how to be assertive. Facing conflicts as an opportunity to strengthen your relationships. Now that you're fighting for yourself, you're showing up for yourself, you're learning that the way you communicate to certain people wasn't effective. And you might even be learning that regardless of how you communicate with certain people, it will never be effective. Because certain people in your life do not respond to assertive communication. They will only twist your words, manipulate your intentions, regardless of how it comes out. And what I've come to learn, at least for myself, is that I'm an excellent communicator. I've always been an excellent communicator. I've just chosen relationships with people who don't listen, who don't care, and who only have their own agenda in mind. And this brings us to the number one way to break codependency: boundaries. You didn't have any boundaries with yourself. You didn't have any boundaries with other people. Buckle up, get some boundaries in place. These are going to be very rigid boundaries at first because you've been letting everything go to shit. It's going to look like you're doing a huge overhaul with other people, but this is really a long time coming. This is finally your turn to empower yourself, step into your confidence, show up as authentically and as real as you can. It's time for you to be your real self. I know, it sounds scary, and it is. But if you're someone who's serious about being true to yourself and you value authenticity, like I know you do, then you're going to be getting yourself ready to gear up for what's ahead. You have to know that this means removing the people that enabled your codependent behaviors. These are all the people that were benefiting from having you in their life, but you were not benefiting from being in theirs. Those relationships that kept your codependency habits in place are going to have to end. I mean, you can keep them around if you want, but the relationship dynamic is going to change because you are changing. They're staying the same. You're shedding an old skin. You're showing up more of who you really are, and they might not like that. The next one I mentioned, you have to learn to understand that just because somebody is feeling a certain way doesn't mean that it's your responsibility to go in and save them and make them feel better. As a sensitive person, I'm not telling you to go out there and get a thick skin. No, I don't want you to lose that beautiful empathic side of yourself, but it needs some boundaries. Now, as you do that, you're going to need to learn ways to comfort yourself. Give yourself compassion so you're not sitting with toxic shame and guilt. People often ask me, Freya, how do I remove toxic shame and guilt? And it's not like you're removing it. You're just learning ways to comfort it. And that's done through the practice of showing yourself compassion. And how do you do that? I recommend working with someone like myself or a therapist that's familiar with inner child work, because it's something that has to be role modeled, like I showed in this YouTube video that I posted a few weeks ago. You need someone to hold you through that process. For me, I learned this with Dr. Margaret Paul, who has an excellent 30-day inner bonding program that I completed as one of the first things that I did in my healing journey before I even learned about boundaries. And I knew that when I take care of my own feelings and I can validate myself, that makes setting the boundaries so much easier, especially when they have to be those rigid ones that most of us are going to have to start to practice and don't have any regrets about them later. And the next one, you also are going to have to learn about what your own needs are. Overcoming codependency means you're no longer catering to other people's needs in the same way anymore. You're learning what you like and maybe bringing back to life some of your childhood interests that got pushed to the side and forgotten about. This process is going to take a while, and I'd say that it's the first reflective process you're going to undertake as you learn how to show up for your feelings and set boundaries. Find a way to check in with yourself every day. Ask yourself, what do I need today? At the end of the day, ask yourself, What needs did I fulfill for myself today? As you want to become more real and authentic, knowing what unique qualities you have and how to honor and tend to them is how you relearn that you matter. You really learn that self-care is not selfish. You stop calling yourself selfish. Calling yourself selfish was what held you back in tending to your own needs. And that's when things become even clearer. Is this a need? And ask yourself, why is it a need for me? Versus, is this just a need for them that I think I should want to do? Have that awareness on your shoulds, okay? Don't shit on yourself. The other thing that I mentioned was self-trust. You're also going to have to learn how to rebuild your self-trust and learn all the ways that you can be more open and vulnerable with your emotions. Everything that I've already talked about is you rebuilding that self-trust. Think of a trust fall, okay? You know, when you do that, you gotta trust the person back there, that when you fall, they're gonna be there to catch you. Trust yourself, that if you mess up, you got your own back. Having trust in yourself. Trust that it's okay if you start to cry and you don't think you'll ever stop. There's no judgment in crying. Trust that if you screw something up trying to set a boundary, that's all right. You got your own back. Trust that making mistakes is part of how we learn. If you're not making mistakes, you're not learning. And you've probably been protecting yourself from making mistakes for so long. And that's why you've been stuck making the same mistakes instead of go and make some new mistakes now, okay? We're not gonna judge ourselves for it. We're gonna trust that we have the capacity and the ability to learn something new and to make some new mistakes that are gonna teach us something else that's gonna be far more productive than the mistakes that we've been making and piling them all on. Now I'm ready to start making mistakes, setting boundaries. I'm starting to make mistakes, asserting myself and being selfish. I'm gonna pile up some of those mistakes and I'm gonna go down a different path now, a path towards being authentic and free and true and real. And while you're doing that, that self-compassion, don't forget it. Self-compassion is the way to overcome all that shame and guilt that you've been carrying with you and those old mistakes. As you're gonna be okay to make some new ones, you gotta be able to comfort yourself and trust that you're gonna get through this. And finally, this one is a pretty big one. And last, but certainly not least, you're gonna have to start to overcome your own addictions. Like, there's no way that you're getting through this without some crutch, whatever you got going on over there. That is going to be probably the hardest part of you facing yourself, is saying to yourself, we need to let that go now. We're letting go of our codependent behavior, but what also needs to be released with that is our own addiction. Not only the addiction of codependency, but there's something else that's there. And it's whatever is there that comes up that you do when those relationships that you're codependent with aren't working out. Those moments when you're single, what is it that you keep tending to? And with this, with the addressing your own addiction, I want to make it really clear how in order to heal from codependency, there needs to be a period of abstinence. Your codependency is still there, looming and lurking in the background. Don't think it's not. And you're going to attract somebody who's at the same level of your own healing. It's very true. The people that you're in relationships with are at the same level of your healing. Once you start to heal, if they're not coming with you, they're going to be gone. Those relationships that you want to try and keep them around, you might start growing apart as you change. Okay, but don't let them bring you down. Don't let them keep you staying stuck in your codependent habits. People are your addiction. Okay, so you gotta learn to turn off the outside noise and start listening to yourself. Because so long as you keep that focus external, you continue to block your internal connection with yourself, which is your needs, which is your own feelings, which is your own healing. You continue to avoid yourself. And it's very easy to do. You can very easily relapse and you don't even realize it. And next thing you know, you're in a relationship with someone else again, thinking that you've overcome your codependency because this person is so perfect, to only realize later that actually they're completely emotionally unavailable and you've done it again. Revisit your own passions, your creative interests. And maybe one thing that you're going to start to take up is the practice of mindfulness, is the practice of doing nothing. Okay, I'm not even joking. The practice of doing nothing. Get addicted to that. Okay, get addicted to silence, to peace, to quietness, because I'm sure your whole life has been very loud and busy and chaotic. And we need to find a way to silence all of that and return to a state of peace. There's, oh man, there's like so much more. There's definitely going to be another video. I'm sure there's going to be some comments on this video that will spark another episode on this topic, because there's so much to be said. Yeah. Everything that I've mentioned in this video today is for you, like I said, to further your own self-awareness. And as you are learning to be mindful and aware in the present moment, I want you to talk to people about this. Reveal to someone this behavior that you have and tell someone that you're working on it. Because if you're just keeping this to yourself, you're keeping it a secret, and that's not healthy either. I want you to find an opportunity to tell someone that you've learned that you're codependent and you're starting to build your awareness on it. And they might have a lot of questions for you, but it's okay if you don't have the answers, because you're still learning. And your learning might actually inspire someone else's learning and will also foster healthier relationships in the long run. All right, that's all for now.